Hello, welcome to the final live Pastor's Perspective this week, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Well, that makes it sound like tomorrow's won't be sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. No, what I mean is tomorrow's program will not be live, neither will Fridays. So today is your last chance this week to give us a call at 888-564-6173. It is 1 hour Wednesday. We're only here for 1 hour today. We were originally going to do 2 hours, but we decided not to. So 1 hour today. Call us in the next hour, and we'll try to get your question answered. 888-564-6173 is the number to call. In the studio with me is Brian Broderson, the senior pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. On the Bobby Cam, we've got Mr. Woo-Woo, author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. And that reminds me, hello to everybody watching Pastor's Perspective on Bobby's YouTube channel, because we're now streaming there too. How cool is that?
That is super cool.
It is very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just so you know, Brian, I do have my earbuds plugged in today, so I'm going to be able to join in the program.
Oh, good.
Hearing everything.
Yes.
So yesterday, Bobby, after when we did the recorded one, I was having all this difficulty hearing, but it was because somebody sabotaged my earbuds and unplugged them. And
it wasn't me.
I didn't know it. Yeah.
Although I did notice a member of our crew disappeared shortly thereafter.
But
I'm looking at said person right now.
I would never, ever imagine that person could do such a thing. So
no.
I just know
unless she's a practical joker.
That
at heart,
didn't happen. I must have just flung my arm up or something.
Yes.
And it flew out. I never paid attention.
That must be it.
So how you doing today, Bobby?
I'm doing great. Yeah, super excited to be with you on today's program.
Yeah.
Hated to leave the second hour. I always love doing this. It was a great time, though, with the kids.
Yeah.
Hanging out with them. And
good.
Yeah, just glad to be with you.
Yay.
Good. So your spirit's good today? Your spirit good?
Yes. My spirit's good, yeah.
Not that conversation again.
It's not... It's,
what about your soul?
It's... My soul, my soul is great, So that's a question, right? Can your soul be good if your spirit's not good? And if your spirit's good, would that necessitate that your soul is good? So we could pick that conversation
and if your
up
mind
again.
is out of whack,
that was fun, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but...
And Brian, you missed last week. Tony and I had some great... I was devil's advocate on all my post-trib reading that I've been doing.
Yeah.
So I was just having a blast with him. But you know what I love about Tony, and I think it's good for radio too, just for our audience to see that people don't always have to line up perfectly. So Tony's he'll feel a little bit more like this. He's got his set ways on his beliefs, and I just kind of like poking at him a little bit, and he'll get right back at me, and it's just he's just a blessing. I love him.
Yeah, I think it's a great chemistry, and I think it's good too. Because obviously Christians, true Christians, real Jesus lovers have different opinions about these things, and sometimes I think we fall into the trap of thinking, well, unless, somebody believes exactly like I do on every single point, then they must somehow be an enemy of some sort. So I think it's so healthy to do this. Man, I'll tell you, though, you got to hand it to Tony. The guy is the fastest gun in the West when it comes to, chapter and verse.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. He sure is.
Chapter and verse thing is just...
he sure is.
He's got it down.
I think I've memorized
a bunch of... So, Brian, I have a question.
Go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead.
Well, okay. I was thinking about you and just like your doctrinal beliefs, right? And I'm like, okay, Brian's like inerrancy. He's young earth. He's pre-trib. Believes in the atonement, the resurrection.
Yeah.
And so then I found myself thinking about like just some of the debacle that you've had to go through in the broader kind of a Calvary movement.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is it because of just your openness to entertain viewpoints outside of that? Because I'm thinking about where you land doctrinally. Is it any different than anybody else maybe that would be more conservative in the Calvary movement compared to where when you were younger? Because it just feels like you hold those same beliefs. It's just you're more gracious to looking at other belief points. So that's a question for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there is just the idea with some people that unless you line up on all the points exactly, and not even line up on them exactly in the sense that you believe them, but you have to fight and contend for them, and you have to insist that there can't be any other, or there's no wiggle room on it, Maybe that's it, because I mean, I've said this many times before. In all of my years of pastoring, there's been no significant change in my theological position in 40 years. I mean, minor changes here and there, but when it comes to the the doctrines, not just the evangelical, sound biblical doctrines, but even the doctrines that are more specific to Calvary Chapel, I pretty much still hold exactly what I've always held to. And so, yeah, but I don't know, maybe you're supposed to hold it in a different sort of a way than I do to make people happy. And then, we've talked about this often these days because it's a reality that a lot of people they're more committed to their ideology than to their theology. So maybe because my ideology doesn't line up with what they think it should line up with according to my theology, maybe that's where part of the problem is too,
Yeah, it seems interesting when you think about it, because a lot of times, I think that maybe the Calvary movement experienced some of this, and certainly other denominations have experienced this. But I do think that we can contradict ourselves pretty quickly when we start, maybe cutting the legs off of maybe some of our own theological peers, but then we're happy to call on Luther and Augustine and Calvin to help us out in our sermon prep. And they would have much more diametrically opposed views than maybe some of us. So it's funny how people who are dead and long gone get a hall pass, and then those who are still living struggle with that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the key. They're dead.
Yep.
So they're not much of a threat when they're dead. So
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, good.
888-564-6173 is our telephone number. Quick reminder, if you're coming to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa tonight, don't, because there's no service, right?
That's right.
That's right.
We had a wonderful Thanksgiving celebration last Wednesday night, and just I missed it because I was in Canada. But I heard from everyone just how fantastic it was. And so we thought, tonight would be good I know my wife is preparing food for tomorrow, and a lot of people are busy doing that. So we just thought we'd give everybody the night off and let them tend to the business at home. Yep. So that's what we're doing.
But church resumes this coming Sunday morning, so be there at 8:30 or 11. New series, too?
Yes, actually, this Sunday we start our Advent series.
Right.
So we will have 5 weeks of preaching the story of Christmas, basically. We're calling it the Songs of Christmas from Luke, where you have, we're going to have an introduction this Sunday to Advent itself. And my brother-in-law, Chuck Smith Jr., is going to be sharing with us, which is great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's just wonderful to have Chuck, who's going to join us that Sunday. The following Sunday, we're going to jump right into Luke's Gospel. Chuck's going to do an intro from Luke 1. But then we're going to jump in with Mary, the Magnificat, the kind of the Song of Mary. Cheryl's going to teach that. And then I think Jordan's going to do Zechariah, Jordan Taylor, our executive pastor. Char, our associate pastor, is going to do actually the birth of Jesus. And I'm going to wrap up the series with Simeon, who was the one who took Jesus as a baby before the Lord and said, thank you, Lord. My eyes have seen your salvation. I can now depart in peace. So it's going to be great. Looking forward to it. And we are going to have only Christmas music starting this Sunday all the way through to the end.
Including Feliz Navidad, right?
Well, obviously. I mean, I'm going to sing that one, right?
It's your favorite.
You know how good I am at that.
Yes. All right, so that's for the next 5 Sundays at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. Service times are 8:30 and 11 Pacific time. If you can't be there in person, you can watch live online at live.cccm.com. If you're here locally in Southern California, you can listen on to the 11 a.m. service on our flagship station, K-Wave 107.9, or our sister station, KSDW, on 88.9 and 96.9 in the San Diego and Temecula area. All right, 888-564-6173. We'll start with a Facebook question. Miguel says or asks, why should a Christian work at a secular job that has policies in place that defend the rights of those who identify with transgender or other sinful sexual identities? All jobs in California require their employees to take sexual harassment training yearly or bi-yearly, and a lot of the questions they ask are contrary to Christian beliefs. Is it sinful for a Christian to take the test and answer according to the training's standards? I've been feeling convicted about that because I feel like I'm not being honest to my Christian beliefs when I answer according to the test standards and not God's standards. Am I somehow lying if I answer their way? I don't want to be seen as a hypocrite answering one way and believing another. Brian, what do you tell Miguel?
Well, that's quite a dilemma. I don't know that it's quite as broad as is being suggested. Like every business in California has this, but many corporations do, for sure. I think that in the most gracious way we possibly can, we should speak the truth. Paul says to speak the truth in love. I think when we're filling out those kinds of things, if that's what we have to do, I think it would probably be best to just tell the truth about what you feel on that. And then if there is some repercussion, you can kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is crazy that is the world that we live in. But it is the world. And then the first kind of the question was, why should a Christian work in that kind of an environment? Well, in some cases, you don't have any other options for employment, right? And secondly, I would say Christians should work in that kind of an environment because the Bible calls us to be salt and light in the world. And so, light is needed when there's darkness. So you're in a dark place, you can be a light there. Salt, in the biblical sense, was used primarily for a preservative to keep meat from rotting. So your very presence could be keeping things from going further and further into, just the depths of human sin and depravity. So what do you think, Bobby?
Yeah. No, those are good words. I agree. I mean, I feel like it's a tough situation and it's a tough world. And unfortunately, there's questions that we're having to process that we never thought imaginable. Even 10 and 15 years ago. And I do think that we're going to have to help people think through a way to live, in kind of exile. I guess we've always been in exile, strangers of the world, but there is a sense where we are noticing what it would feel like to live in a Babylonian culture that doesn't live and look to us in a favorable way. And how can we be Daniel-like? And I think about Daniel working with Nebuchadnezzar or Darius. Certainly, you would have had a lot of things where their beliefs would have differed, yet he didn't say, or Nehemiah didn't say to Artaxerxes, I'm done here. So it seems as though Esther could have a role with Ahasuerus, and Nehemiah could have a role, or Daniel and the 3 Hebrew children. It feels like there's a role to be had. We think about Joseph with Potiphar. And so that just encourages me to not shut down, to not isolate, and to, as you said, be salt in this culture that we live in.
Yeah, and each of those examples that you gave, Bobby, these are men and women who did not with the exception of Esther. But, they did not hide their identity. They did not hide their faith. In other words, Daniel certainly did not hide his faith. He was very upfront about it. It got him cast into the lion's den under Darius, we know. And so same with Nehemiah. So I think that's an important thing, too. If you're seeking to be a witness, if God's called you to be a witness, then you can't be much of a witness if nobody knows that you're actually a Christian and why your convictions are what they are. But at the same time, we obviously need to be gracious and hold them in humility, hold our views in humility. And in some cases, we might have to suffer consequences like being let go from a job. And that's where then we have to trust the Lord to say, okay, God, you've got something else for me, and I'm going to trust you to move me on. So,
Miguel, thanks for sending in your question a really long time ago on Facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective using the Messenger feature. We didn't forget you. It just takes a long time to get to all these questions. Our phone calls take priority, so if you guys have questions, give us a call at 888-564-6173. That is the best way to get an answer. Even if you're watching on Facebook or Bobby's YouTube channel, the 1 Minute Apologist channel, send in your questions using the Facebook.com. No. The best way to get an answer, call us, 888-564-6173. That's what I meant to say. All right, let's start our time on the phones with Jerry in California. Hi there, Jerry. Hebrews 14 is where you're taking us.
Yes, sir. I want to thank you guys for taking my call. I love your guys' show. And I want to tell you happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. You too.
You too, Jerry. Thanks.
Thank you. You as well.
Okay. So my question today is with the biblical question is with Hebrews 14, where it says, "For we have not a high priest which cannot, touch with our feelings." In this version, it says infirmities. In another version, it says weaknesses, but was in all points tempted, like as we are, yet without sin. So my question is, was Jesus tempted like how we are with fornication, lies, stealing? It says in all points. So he knows how to deal with us, and he knows how to sympathize with us because he was tempted the same way as us. Yeah. So would it be fair to say that?
Bobby, what would you tell Jerry?
Yeah, I used to read it like that as well, thinking to myself, so, I mean, in order to, sympathize with us, did that mean he had to be tempted, to go on an LSD trip because he would know the future and he would know our future temptations? And would he be tempted to become, have a sex change? Would he be tempted to go through everything that you could possibly think of? And I don't think that is what the text would have us understand. The way that I've landed on this, Jerry, is how are we tempted? I think we're tempted by the world, the flesh, and the devil. And I think that Jesus would have experienced those three temptations: the temptation of the world, the temptation of the flesh, and the temptation, obviously, in his 40 days in the wilderness, as you see in Matthew chapter 4, where the enemy even offered him the temptations of the world. And so the temptation of the flesh with the bread. And so I think if you go over to Matthew 4, you can kind of square Hebrews 4:15 up in a nice way.
Brian?
I agree with Bobby. I think that we don't have to imagine Jesus being tempted, in every conceivable way to have been tempted in all points like we are. So being tempted is being tempted regardless of what the temptation is toward. Some people struggle with some types of sins and are tempted by them. Other people are not fazed by those kinds of things. So I think, that, and I also would think that the temptation of Jesus is so far greater than anything any human has ever experienced. I mean, the devil came right to him and offered him the whole world. I mean, that has not happened to any other human being. So, I think, Bobby, your answer was absolutely right.
But I think Bobby wants to add something.
Well, I got a question. Brian, if you had to take a stab at it, what do you think Jesus' greatest temptation would have been?
I think it's actually seen in the passage you refer to. I think his greatest temptation was to take advantage of his divinity, to actually use it to benefit himself apart from the plan of God. And that's what Satan is essentially tempting him to do those 3 times.
Now, what was the reference Bobby gave?
Yeah.
Because people might want to say...
Matthew chapter 4.
The story of the 40 days when he was fasting for 40 days. Yeah.
So, the devil comes to him and says, if you're the Son of God, take these stones and turn them into bread. And Jesus, he could turn stones into bread. It's not a problem. So, but if he does, then he is stepping out of what God's called him to do. So I think to act independent of God's will is what Jesus was being tempted to do.
Interesting. All right. Miguel, thanks for... Was that Miguel's question? No. We had already moved on to Jerry. Jerry, does that help
And
you?
hey, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you for calling us.
Jerry.
Bobby, go ahead.
Yeah, one other thought just for our audience that they might find it helpful. Theologians have entertained this idea of how was Jesus tempted? Was he peccable or impeccable? The peccability of Christ versus the impeccability of Christ. So if Jesus was peccable, it would mean that he was tempted and could have sinned. To say that he is impeccable is to say that he was tempted and cannot sin. And I would fall down on the side of the fact that Jesus was impeccable. Now, the person who holds to peccability, that he was tempted and could sin, they struggle making the leap over to impeccability, that he was tempted and cannot sin, because they reason as follows. How then could he really have been tempted if he could not have fallen into temptation? And I think the way that we can reconcile that is by saying, how could an army that is such a conquering army, continue to conquer? Well, it can still be challenged, right? Can a conquering army still be challenged? Can a undefeated team still be challenged? And I'd say that's the kind of spirit in which I would look at it. And the way that we have to reconcile this is where we bring in Christology. And we look at the 2 natures of Christ. We remember that Jesus existed co-eternally with the Father and with the Spirit as the second person of the Godhead. And this is what we believe by Trinitarian theology, that there's one God expressed in 3 persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In the incarnation, as we think about Advent, Jesus assumed flesh in the incarnation. Therefore, he assumed a human nature that was tethered to his divine nature. And so I heard a person once say this, and it really helped seal the deal of impeccability for me. He said, suppose I took an iron hanger and I asked you to bend it. Could you bend the iron hanger? And I said, well, of course I could bend an iron hanger. He said, okay, that represents the human nature of Christ. And he said, now imagine if I gave you a crowbar. Could you bend that? And I said, absolutely not. And now he said, let's say I took the iron hanger and I wrapped it around the crowbar and I handed it to you. Could you now bend the crowbar? And I said, no, I couldn't. But you think about it, if the crowbar had feelings, it could feel the force of me trying to bend it, but it wouldn't bend. And so too, I think that Jesus' divine nature protected him from falling into sin. Nevertheless, he was tempted in all of our ways while remaining impeccable.
Brilliant.
Yes.
That is brilliant. And just for clarification, so peccable or impeccable comes from the Latin word peccare, I think is the word.
That's right.
And
it is.
The English word, and we don't use this word too often, but peccadillo. A peccadillo is a sin, but we don't, whoever says,
really, I didn't
Brian,
know that. That's funny.
Noticed your peccadillos these days. But,
stay away from the peccadillos.
Yes.
So that's where peccability or impeccability comes from. It peccable means can sin. Impeccable means can't sin. And
that's right.
I fully agree with you, Bobby. And I think I probably at some time in my life as a Christian, I think I probably transitioned from the view of peccability to impeccability. The more you think about it, the more you realize, like the crowbar and the hanger is a great illustration, because that's really...
Isn't that a great illustration?
Yeah. And I've always told people, because I still have occasion know conversations with people who insist that in Jesus, unless Jesus was really tempted or could have sinned, that he wasn't really tempted. But I'd say, well, the problem with that is that Jesus has a divine nature. God says about himself, he does not tempt, nor is he tempted. So if Jesus is God, who of course he is, then he's not tempted. I heard somebody say one time that to illustrate it, it's like you could attack a battleship with a rubber raft. You could attack it, but you will not sink it. And I think, well, that's a good picture of the way it is with Jesus.
It is a great picture.
Good conversation, as always, on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is how you can join the conversation. Give us a call between now and 4 o'clock. This is our last live program this week, so if we don't get to you today, call us on Monday. Yes, Monday. We're going to be live on Monday. We normally are not live on Monday, but we will be this coming Monday, the 29th of November.
Okay, before we move on, I want to ask a question of both of you guys, if you remember this. Remember, we had a conversation with a young lady a few months back now. And there were two ladies that we talked to on the same day.
I know what. Yes, I was thinking about this the other day.
Okay, remember? So one of the ladies was a Christian who did not understand why we would insist that same-sex marriage is wrong, and she taught her children to just accept that and embrace it. And then we talked to her about, well, actually, the Bible teaches that this is not God's will. And she was like, "Oh wow, okay, that's great to know." And then, but then the other young lady that we talked to, she was living in a lesbian relationship, and she was open to hearing what the Word had to say, right? And then we had a really good conversation with her. I was just trying to refresh my memory on kind of some of the details of that conversation. I don't know if you remember anything that stands out to you.
Which lady?
With the young woman who was living in
I think she met her quote unquote girlfriend at the coffee shop she was working at, and they started a relationship. And I think she was basically trying to figure out how can, because she was still attracted to men, I think, at some point, but she was wondering something of that. We could try to find it and replay it.
I just wanted to refresh my memory on that. I was needing to do that. So, do you remember anything specific?
That was an encouraging discussion, though.
It was a great conversation.
Well, I remember the one. Yeah, I remember the mom. What was pretty powerful was her stepping back and just thinking, "Wow, maybe I've went about this the wrong way." And we were really impressed with her humility and teachability, because that's a lot to digest. Like, okay, maybe I've just completely raised my kids wrong as it relates to this issue. But saying, I'll go to the Bible and look at that. And so I loved that humility from that discussion.
Yep. That was good.
Good, yeah.
This is Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call between now and 4 o'clock. Our music will be starting any second now. I know what I can talk about. Pastor Brian Broderson's new book. Well, it's not a new book. It's a new translation. It is now in Yiddish. Is that the translation you're doing? No.
No, the Yiddish one is still, it's on its way.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on its way.
Spanish, the Spanish version of The Powers of Darkness and the People of God. What's the title, Brian?
The Powers of Darkness and the People of God.
I wanted you to show off your Spanish. Your Espanol.
That's not going to happen. You need to show off your Spanish.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because I know you.
No, I have been practicing lately. So let's see if I can do this. Let me find the title. It is, oh, look at that. Spanish Powers of Darkness. No, that's not. Let me click through. Here it is. What? I can't even read that. Los poderes. That's it. Los poderes de la oscuridad y el pueblo de Dios. I think that's right.
Sounded great.
Muy bien.
El señor Brian Broderson. So you can get that at backtobasicsradio.com. Click store, find it there. You can find the English version as well and lots of other books that Brian has written. Backtobasicsradio.com. And we will be back in just a couple of minutes with more of your questions at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. Sometimes 2 minutes is not enough, or 3 minutes, whatever it is. This is Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here, and we're live for a few more minutes. Give us a call at 888-564-6173. Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa is answering your questions. So is Dr. Bobby Conway, Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. He's also the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. And September 13th is, I believe, the episode that you were referring to, Pastor Brian. I did a quick search, and I think I may have found it.
Yeah. Portia was the gal that we spoke to.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Portia, if you're listening still, thinking about you and hope you're doing well. I have a question for the double doc. Has nothing to do with your doctoring. It has something to do with your pastoring.
Well, good.
So have you guys done I know you've done a soft launch. Or is there a full launch day coming up for you guys as a church?
Yeah. So, the good news is we plan to launch in the middle of January, and we just found out this week there's a furniture store in Charlotte, a Lazy Boy that is no longer there, and it looks like we're going to be able to rent that 7 days a week, which will be fantastic, because I was fearful with COVID that we were going to get put in a situation if we went to a school that it could just knock us right out as a church. So I said, I really feel like church planting in this time, we need 7-day facilities that can protect us from that. So yeah, that's the goal, is to get in there. They're going to put all brand new carpet and paint in. We'll have a key, 7-day access, children's ministries, and we're going to launch. Hopefully we'll have it ready by mid-January. And, we've had 25 teachings through the book of Acts, utilize the book of Nehemiah to do all the leadership training, just form the small groups, the image groups. And so between now and launch, we just got to kind of raise up some different classroom teachers and get our greeters. We'll do a couple dry runs, and we'll launch the church with the book of Revelation, and we'll be off and going.
Wow, that's great.
So will you be sitting at a Lazy Boy recliner when you teach on Sundays?
No, the ushers will carry me down on a golden throne and bring me up to the front to present the message. Yes, and
the congregation will be in the Lazy Boy recliners.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah. It's like plush seats or something. Like when you go to the movie theater, I'm going to do cup holders and all that.
We're going to do some of that. We're going to have some cool old pews that we're going to get in there. We're going to have some cool seats. We'll have a couple round tables. We'll create a real cultural vibe for it. So super stoked. I think we'll be able to launch with about 100 people. And so that's pretty good considering COVID and all the inconsistency of meeting and not having classrooms. Yeah. We feel thankful to be able to launch with that kind of strength.
So is that facility a pretty sure deal then? You guys got that nailed down?
I never feel good until I sign that contract and get the key. But we've already seen all the negotiations and the offers there. We're just waiting to sign papers. Yeah. But it's kind of like I get really nervous that something could get in the way. I don't know why, but it'll be good to get that.
Cool.
ImageChurch.live is where you can find out more about Bobby's church. 888-564-6173 is our number. And next we're going to go to Joshua in California. Hello, Joshua. How can we help you?
Hi. I just want to start off my question by saying, I know, not every church is perfect. But my question is, so my wife and I have been, wanting to learn more about, spiritual giftings and, demon casting on all that kind of stuff, and our church doesn't really focus too much on it. So is there a point where we should just kind of stick it through with the church, or at what point would you advise or suggest leaving a church?
Now, why do you want to learn about demon casting, as you put it?
It's just in the Bible, right? And Jesus did it, and he also commanded it. So I just just going off that.
Okay, Brian.
Well, I would say that, what you're looking for mainly in a church is you're looking for a church that's strongly rooted in the scriptures, that really, believes the Bible, faithfully teaches the Bible. And of course, the Bible talks about the ministry of the Spirit, the power of the Holy Spirit, the gifts of the Spirit. So you want a church that believes those things and is looking to engage in those kinds of experiences for the body of Christ. The casting out demons thing, Brian mentioned that because that sends a little bit of a red flag up because there's a lot of misunderstanding about Christians and demons and what the relationship is. And, if a Christian can be demon-possessed, some people say yes, others say no. I think the answer is no because I don't think the Bible teaches that. So you want to be careful not to go into a place where you have more of an emphasis on experience that's not grounded solidly in Scripture. But it is possible to be in a church that believes the Bible, but yet is, can sometimes be sort of dead in their expression of their faith, and that's not good or healthy either. So, I mean, there's no problem leaving a church, because there is one church. There's a church with a big C, and wherever you go, you're still part of that church. But sometimes a local congregation can be a place where you say, we're not really connecting here like we want to connect. We're not really experiencing here what we want to experience. It's not a bad thing to look for a place that you feel more aligned with. Mm-hmm. So, but you want to be careful too.
Yeah, Joshua, what do you think of that answer?
Yeah, I think that's very wise. I really appreciate you taking the question. It gives me a little bit more clarity. So thank you for that.
Cool. And we appreciate you listening. But Bobby wanted to see if you wanted to chime in as well. What would you offer to Joshua and his wife?
Yeah. I would agree with Joshua that when we read the Bible, we see a lot about demons being casted out with Jesus' ministry. And we look at that and we think, my goodness, if we're supposed to do greater things than him, that would be collectively as a church, then maybe that should be a part of what we're doing. But I would say, I wouldn't disagree that there would be non-believers that could be possessed today and that are possessed today, and that there could be oppression that takes place in the believer's life. Having been a Christian for 30 years and been in the ministry for close to 3 decades now, I don't know that I could think offhand of anybody that I would say was unequivocally this person was demon possessed, that I could have made that pronouncement. The one person that I wonder about is on the island of Patmos, the Eastern Orthodox guy in his vestments before I went into the cave. I wondered if he was demon possessed for some reason, and I thought about him the other day. I mean, this guy, because I talked inside the cave, he looked at me and he just stared me down, and I thought something is just not right with this guy. I mean, he looked so evil to me. I couldn't explain. I just felt a dark presence. But how would I really know that, right? And so I think if somebody's foaming out the mouth and flopping and doing some of that kind of stuff, then some of the things you might see in the New Testament, well, okay, maybe there's something else going on there. So my hesitancy is, if you're looking for a church where people are just casting out demons, you might find that people are, projecting on people. And, wouldn't that be a terrible thing? Like, to show up at church, you're just kind of overwhelmingly depressed, you're downcast, and you go in, and because people are passionate about casting out demons, they decide to start exorcising you. And then you leave traumatized because, people now telling you you're demon possessed. And so I just feel like we got to be really cautious there, right? Like, but before we start exorcising somebody, we really need to be sure here.
Yeah, that has happened. That scenario has been repeated over and over again. So it's a good
it's just tragic
thing to be cautious about.
Yes, absolutely. Joshua, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. Now we're going to go to Joanne. Thank you for calling 888-564-6173. How can we help you, Joanne?
Well, thank you, first of all, for just listening. I want to especially aim at Dr. Broderson here. I have a question because I'm 75. I've been a born-again Christian, loving the Lord since I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have lived faithfully for him, and I have tried to work with the church over and over and over in different ways, and found that because my calling didn't match their legalistic viewpoint, I was constantly being excluded, not directly attacked, but just excluded, pushed aside. And the pain, it accumulates to the place where you wonder, what in the world's wrong with me? And I have been tuned in a lot to Dr. Broderson, your teaching program, and Skip Heitzig, and Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa on Sunday mornings, and Ray Bentley on Saturday. I mean, I've really listened a lot and gotten a heck of a lot out of it. And particularly, Phil Metzger is dealing with cultural issues, and Skip Heitzig. I'm hearing the church turn around. I've had a sister in the Lord for 54 years, and she was excluded from her family, Cuban refugee, came here, was excluded by her family because she said to her mom, I have to follow the Lord, and mom said, no, you're following me.
Mm-hmm.
And they excluded her from, they pushed her out of marriage situations,
Mm-hmm.
they pushed her out of the family, the whole bit. But when my folks and I brought her into our family situation, then we got attacked and attacked and attacked.
So
First time I went to try and get a job in a Christian school, I was told, you're too close to that black girl.
Now,
And
Joanne, when you say that
we-
the church has caused, you can't get involved in ministry at the church, are you talking about the big church, like the church in general,
I
any
don't
church you
mean
go
a
to, or one
particular-
specific church?
No, I'm talking about the whole picture of the evangelical church. Now,
So no matter what
I
church
have
you
been-
go to, they don't allow you to serve in ministry.
I only have so much access to so many churches.
Okay.
And I have been not available because I have been doing one-on-one caretaking.
Okay. Brian, what do you tell Joanne?
Well, Joanne, these things do happen, and sadly, sometimes they happen more frequently to some than they do to others, and it's wrong. It shouldn't be this way, but sadly, it is. And so the question is, what do we do about it? We mentioned earlier a book that I wrote on the subject of spiritual warfare called The Powers of Darkness and the People of God. And I have a chapter in this book that it's really interesting because I wrote this book several years ago in its original smaller form, and I've just added to it as time has gone on. And as I was updating it a while back, I really had this strong sense that I was supposed to include a chapter dealing with the issue of giving place to the devil through unforgiveness and bitterness and things like that. I really didn't want to write it. Part of it was just laziness. I wanted to hurry and get done so I could just get the book reprinted. But it was one of those times where the Lord just kept pressing me to really write this chapter. And I did, because in the decades now that I have been in ministry, I have seen more damage by the enemy and more casualties due to unforgiveness and bitterness and things like that than I ever would have dreamed that I would see when I was a young pastor. And so I'm just going to read you this one paragraph that I wrote here, and then I'm going to just give you one word of encouragement and advice. So it says this: as a Christian, it is highly likely that at some time or another, someone, even another Christian, is going to hurt you, quite possibly very deeply, People you've trusted will betray you. People you've helped will take advantage of you. People you've loved will hate you, lie about you, and slander you. This is life, and sadly, it occurs in the church at times. When these things happen, you can be sure that Satan will be right there to take advantage of the situation. This is the way it is.
What page is that for people who have your book and they want to read that?
That is
section?
page 70,
Okay.
the second paragraph on page 70. And, you know, what I want to say, Joanne, is all of the things that you're talking about are unfortunate. They are sad. They are not the way it's supposed to be. But the only way out of it and beyond it, and the way to not get ensnared by the enemy, is to forgive. And it's just that simple. To just, you know, Jesus, when Jesus is being crucified, what does he say about the people who are crucifying him? He says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." And you know, I wrote this book and I wrote this chapter out of my own human experience. And I could think of many times I've been attacked and lied about and all of this. And, you know, at times I just think, wow, Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. And sometimes it's just that. It doesn't mean they're not responsible. It just means that they're obviously not really thinking Christianly. They're not realizing that what they're doing is devastating to people. So I just want to give you this word of encouragement, Joanne. Just forgive them. Just go before the Lord. Just say, Lord, you know, all of these experiences that I've had, you know, and would you help me to just forgive? Because if you don't forgive, Paul's whole point is the devil takes advantage of us when we get entrenched in these kinds of things. It gives him a foothold. It gives him an opportunity to interfere with our lives, and we don't want to give him that opportunity.
And I appreciate Joanne's heart that she wants to serve in ministry.
Yeah.
And Brian, I've heard you talk many times about getting involved in church, not just, you know, don't just come to church on Sunday morning and leave as soon as you say, in Jesus' name, amen. And then bam, it's a dash to the parking lot. Where are we going to eat lunch today? You know, she actually wants to serve in ministry. So if she can't serve at her church, if there's no openings or whatever, she can still serve in her own way at home, would you say? How would she maybe just be an intercessory prayer?
We serve the Lord whether we're in church or not. I mean, you know, our lives are service to the Lord. So if there is, you know, say your church is not recognizing that or seeing your gifting or appreciating it, then just ask the Lord, how do I serve you in light of these circumstances? You know, show me the way. And I think God will do that. I think he's faithful.
Joanne, thanks for calling us today on Pastor's Perspective.
Let's go to line 2 because it's a super easy one. We can answer Christine, who's been waiting so patiently.
Arizona, you're on.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's your question?
Good. I've been going through the book of Revelation, and there's a lot of symbolism in that book. There's a lot of terms I don't understand, like the great multitude in white robes, the seal, seventh seal in the golden censer, the angel in the little scroll, the woman and the dragon, versus the woman and the beast, the 144,000 sealed versus the lamb and the 144,000, the 40 months of trials, suffering for certain time frames, the woman and the 7 bowls.
You got a pretty good take on the book.
Et cetera, et cetera. You know, that ties in Christine's question with a Facebook question sent in by Christian. I've been listening to a pastor for about a month now. I really enjoy his teachings, especially when he goes into the typology and enigmas that are in the book of Jude and throughout the Bible. What is your perspective on this kind of teaching? Go ahead.
On the enigmas and the types of the Bible, that's an interesting perspective on it. Well, first of all, Christine, she's going through the book of Revelation. The question here is, what is a good book to explain the symbolism? So I am going to recommend a book that I think is an excellent book it's a commentary on the book of Revelation by somebody that Bobby would know, quite well, John Walvoord. John Walvoord was the president of Dallas Theological Seminary for many years, and a scholar who specialized in eschatology or end times type of teaching, prophecy. And so his commentary on the book of Revelation, I think, is a really balanced. He's a very common sense guy. He doesn't get into the sensationalism that sometimes people will get into when it comes to the book of Revelation. So I would recommend John Walvoord's commentary on Revelation. And I would also recommend a new commentary on the book of Revelation that was published recently by our good friend, Pastor Greg Laurie. I know Greg probably would have gleaned a lot from Walvoord, and Greg always, does a great job in expositing and making things clear. So I think Greg would be really helpful too. Bobby, you're studying Revelation right now in preparation for January. Anything that you would recommend?
As I'm gearing up for it, I'm just trying to get my hands around the data that I've got to dig into. So, like, I know that Gregory Beale, I know that Craig Keener's book on like a good one that would be accessible. Now, he's going to be a post-trib guy, but he is going to be a pre-mill, so he's going to hold to a millennium. But a great scholar, and it's the NIV Life Application Commentary. And I think that would be a very accessible book to read as well. So basically, my whole approach is I'm trying to figure out how to handle all the different data as well. I mean, it gets kind of wheels off, right? The symbolism. But the one position that I'm probably most uncomfortable with of interpreting Revelation would be the historist position. It basically just sees these seven churches as representing a different age. I can see some partial preterism in there, obviously not a full, like some of the things being fulfilled. So understanding some of the symbolism as it might relate to AD 70 and the destruction of the temple. But then some of the idealistic interpretation, it can be helpful, but then certainly seeing it as a futuristic book.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would probably say you and I would land very similar, except I probably find myself leaning more away from the pre-trib and more toward a post-trib, but I haven't landed yet. Because I feel like it would be premature, but I'm struggling with these two movements here that I got to figure this out.
You've got Pastor Tony Clark to beat you back onto the right path.
Yes.
So I'll just leave that to him.
Yep.
that is his task. But for Christine, if you would like to listen, backtobasicsradio.com. My teaching is there, and I do believe that my Revelation series is there too, and you could listen to that if you wanted to. I would go into the details of those things in that teaching.
All right, so that's backtobasicsradio.com. Do a search there on the top right for Revelation, and wow, there's a lot of stuff on here. These are just sermons, right? Oh, and there's a flash drive.
A flash drive, right. Why the book of Revelation? Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So check all that out. Backtobasicsradio.com. Bobby.
Do you ever feel like when you're reading Revelation, though, like it's just like all these symbols that were brought up, like I want to be able to just, I kind of want to be able to be dogmatic about what they all mean. You're right, because it feels like that would be the reward of my study, right? Like if I could just say, well, how could you possibly miss this, right? And sometimes I'm like, it's like, well, is it this or is it this? Yeah. And it really is a puzzle, isn't it?
Yeah. But I do think there are some places where we can solve the puzzle, and I think there are other places where we just can't.
I do too.
I mean, I have, Revelation 17 is the hardest. It is the hardest chapter in the book of Revelation to me. It's like, over the years,
hits
it's like
wheels off.
sometimes I feel like, oh, I get it. I totally get it. I see it. It's so clear. Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then next time it's like, wait, what did I see there? Wait, what does that mean again? It's just, So yeah, it's a challenge. I love the book of Revelation. It is perhaps my favorite book of the Bible. Not for reasons that people might think because of all the exciting stuff about prophecy, but I think because the entirety of Scripture comes together in the book of Revelation. I just think it's so fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Christine.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank
to
you,
people.
sir. You too.
All of
to
us.
people, not
Yes,
just to me.
You,
To everybody.
Bobby.
Yes, everybody.
Everybody, thank you so much. Have a great Thanksgiving. We will be back live on Monday. Not normally live on Monday, but we will be live on Monday the 29th. So we'll talk to you then. Sorry that we couldn't get to your call. And God bless you guys. Happy Thanksgiving, as Pastor Brian said. For Pastor Brian and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. Have a great long weekend. Pastor's Perspective is sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.